What's up, everybody? It is a beautiful day out here in Santa Barbara, and we are starting off the year on a good note with a solid hill workout. So today's workout was quite tough, and we'll get into the details of that here in a second. So why would you want to do some hill sprints in your training? Well, for one, hill sprints are going to have a lower tissue cost, but a higher metabolic cost. So you're going to be less likely to get injured, say pulling a hamstring, hip flexor, something like that, because there's less of an eccentric demand when you do hill sprints. Because you're basically pushing yourself up the hill every step, you don't have as much of that eccentric stress that you get from flat ground sprinting, or even more so from sprinting downhill. But the metabolic stress is quite high because you're having to overcome gravity and push yourself up the hill. So whether it's the same distance or the same duration of a workout that you might do on the track, say you're doing 30-meter sprints or you're sprinting for, say, 5 seconds, going 5 seconds up the hill is going to be a lot harder. Doing 30s up the hill is going to be a lot harder than on flat ground. So earlier in your year, when you're trying to get conditioned, maybe you're trying to lose a little weight, lean up, or you just need to, push yourself a little bit, change things up, and make your workouts a little harder, then doing them on a hill is a great way to do that, because it's going to be harder, but it's going to be quite safe from an injury risk perspective. The only injury risk I would say there might be is if you have an issue with your calves or your Achilles or your feet. Maybe it's going to be a little bit harsh on those, but after you do a couple workouts, you get used to it, and it's really not a big deal. I did wear the Antipes muscle runners today. They work great for running up hills, so was happy with that. The other thing with hills, I think, is that they offer you a way to train when maybe you're not quite in shape to do a super fast flat ground sprinting workout. Like for me, if I go to the track and I'm doing flat ground sprints, just normal sprints, 40s, 50s, whatever, but I'm not that fast that day, it always tends to be a little disappointing. Whereas if I'm running up a hill, it's going to be inherently slower than it otherwise would have been because I'm running uphill. So if I'm not feeling that great, I'm not going to get down on myself for running a little bit slower uphill, because it's just not the same mentally for me as when I do flat ground sprinting. So because of the fact that it has a lower tissue cost, a higher metabolic cost, it's a little bit slower, but it is significantly harder than flat ground sprinting. All those things together make it a great option for me, at least at this point in my training, where I'm not, my goal is not to compete in a month or anything like that. I'm just trying to get to the point where I'm in the best shape possible, that I have the least amount of pain possible, that this injury goes away, and that I continue to make gains in whatever I'm doing. Now, today's workout, I did 3 sets of 30, 60, 90. So I'd run a 30, I'd walk back, run a 60, walk back, run a 90, walk back, wait about 5 minutes. I'd actually wait 5 minutes and then I'd walk back, and then I'd do another set. I did 3 sets total, and by the end I was pretty thrashed. I was running about maybe 5-1 for the 30, about 9-1 for the 60, and 13-6 for the 90. So it was if you were to equate it to flat ground sprinting, that's like running a 50, a 70, and a 120 maybe. Definitely got harder as I went up in distance. Like the 30, not that big of a deal. You can feel it, but it's not that challenging. Go to the 60 and you're like, all right, that was a little tough. I'm breathing. I'm kind of hands on my knees after that rep, but I'm good. Then you walk down, you run a 90, and that's like, you're totally thrashed after. So like I said, it's one of those things where you can get a much more challenging workout out of it, but I don't feel beat up. Like my tissues don't feel beat up. I'm sure when I get in the truck, ride home, and I get out of it, I'm going to feel like my legs are full of lactic acid. But as far as the tissue stress itself, I feel pretty good. Much better than if I were to just go do that same workout on flat ground. So how do these hills fit into my overall training program? Well, for me, my basic approach to training right now is I'll do some kind of sprint workout, whether that's flat ground sprinting, uphill sprinting, or a mix of uphill and downhill. Then the next day I'll go to the gym. I'll do some heavy sled pulls. I might do some weighted drills, weighted straight leg bounds, something like that. I either use a bar, a weight vest, or the Exogen calf sleeves to load those exercises, or I just pull a heavy sled. I do think that, the most important part of the acceleration is probably early acceleration, because that's where the biggest change in velocity happens in the sprint. So if you can't make that happen, then you're going to be catching up to people the whole way, and unless you have amazing top speed, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So in my mind, by doing really heavy sled pulls where I'm still trying to maintain a pretty high stride frequency, really hammer in those angles that we want to see in early acceleration, but overload that early part of the sprint. I would imagine that might help. So I'm trying to do some of those when I go to the gym. After I do the sleds, I'll usually do some type of jumping exercise. So that might be a drop broad jump. It might be a drop jump up to a box vertically. It could be a single leg drop, stepping up onto a box, a hinge jump, step up jumps or strike jumps or rocket jumps, people call them. Just different variations, some horizontal, some vertical, some type of jumping exercise. I like to do that after the sleds. Then I go into the gym and I'll do either power cleans or hang snatches. Then I'll do some kind of squatting exercise or step up. And then I might throw in some accessories, like for a while I was doing some hip flexor work, some ab work, and some banded stuff to work on the swing phase of sprinting. So one thing I'm trying to do with my training is be a little bit more disciplined about how often I'm timing my sprints with the free lap. Like, I used to just time them all the time. And on one hand, I think that's useful because it's good to know where you're at. It's good to see how your training is progressing. But it's sort of a double-edged sword because while it's great when you run a fast time and that builds up your confidence, it doesn't feel so great when you're running slow. You can't necessarily expect yourself to run fast as far as like PRs all the time, nor should you. You know, if you PR every day at practice, eventually you're going to burn out and the PRs are going to stop. I know Randy Huntington, he said something to the effect of that, where it's like, I don't want my guys to be running super fast all the time, all year round. Yes, we should be running relatively fast year round, but do I want them in, you know, peak Olympic shape in September when the Olympics are going to be a year from that? You know, probably not. So while I'm nowhere near that level of performance, I still think the same concept applies, where timing your sprints with the free lap, at least for me at this point in my life and my sprinting career, quote unquote, I think timing my sprints should be something that I do on days that I know I'm able to run fast and days where I want to elevate the stimulus of the workout a little bit from a velocity perspective or from an intensity perspective. It should not be the baseline. The other issue is I think that you can sort of deaden yourself or kind of like make timing yourself a little less exciting when you do it all the time. And then when you go to a race, you're not going to have as much of that like extra excitement built up around the race if you're timing yourself every single day. So while I do see a lot of benefit in timing your sprints every time you go out to the track to run fast, for me at this point, I think it's wise for me to not do that, partly because I want my fast days to be sort of special, and B, I don't want to burn myself out and get hurt again. So if I'm not timing myself, I'm not going to push myself to the point where I'm likely to get hurt, because there really isn't a reward. You know, the reward for me when I run fast and I see a fast time, you know, that's exciting. You get a dopamine hit and you're like, yeah, hell yeah, that was cool. Do I want to do that all the time? Do I want to push myself to that level all the time? Is it wise for me to push myself to that level all the time? I don't think so. I think the wise approach is to periodically and strategically bring timing into the equation, so that way I run fast on the days where I'm in shape to run fast, and then the days where I'm not in shape to do that, I do something else, like the hill sprints, maybe some flat sprints where I'm not timing them, maybe some plyometrics, different exercises. So just something I thought was worth mentioning, and I think on that note, I'm going to wrap up the video. So did some good hill sprints, been doing sprint, lift, off, repeat, not timing all my days because I think it's a wise approach to sort of use it periodically, and that's where I'm at. So hope you guys had a happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you celebrate, and that's about it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Catch you guys next time. I'm out.